All right, guys. Well, as usual, I have another awesome guest for you with this episode's interview. And today I have Coach Ryan Baxter on. Ryan is a software engineer turned health coach and obstacle course racer. He lives in New Hampshire with his wife, 7-year-old daughter, and 3-year-old son, where he operates RJB Health Coaching. Ryan combines knowledge about ancestral health and training to optimize performance as an athlete in obstacle course racing. He is a certified primal health coach and SGX coach. Through his health coaching business, he strives to help athletes achieve their own goals, both on and off the race course, using an ancestral model for health and exercise. So, Coach Ryan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good, Mike. How are you?
Good, good. How are things in New Hampshire?
It's we've skipped spring and we've headed right into summer. Yesterday it was like 90 degrees with a bunch of humidity, and just a few weeks ago I was running in the snow. So yeah, it's warm, so it's a welcome change. But yeah, we skipped spring and just right into the heat.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I remember being in Connecticut for college, and it was often like that, where it kind of you just never knew. Sometimes I distinctively remember like it being 80 degrees, getting outside, getting a sunburn, and then it snowed the next day, and it's like,
Yeah,
all right,
yeah, kind of never know what you're gonna get here, so
yeah.
it's just part of living in the Northeast. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, I'm really excited to have you on here. I'm really interested and want to chat more about your specific approach to training and performance.
Yeah.
But let's kind of get started. How did you first get involved, like racing yourself and coaching, specifically with like obstacle course racing?
Yeah. So I, coming out of college, I was kind of lost as far as physical fitness was concerned. I would, go to the gym in college and whatnot, but I had no real goal. I didn't really, I pretty much was not involved in sports or athletics as a kid. So I would just go there, kind of just wing it, get on the elliptical, blah, blah, blah. I knew it was good for me, but that's about it. And then after I graduated, my wife was kind of into road racing, and I wanted to continue to work out, but I hated running. It was not something I was
Mhm.
into, especially running on the road. Um, but so I was trying to search for putting some meaning behind the physical activity I was doing, and um, I landed on obstacle course racing because while it was still running and it wasn't something I was thrilled about, at least it was on a trail most of the time, and also it wasn't just straight running. It was, we had obstacles into it. Just sounded pretty cool. So I leaned toward that and decided to do my first obstacle course, which was in 2015 at Fenway Park. So at the Fenway Stadium sprint, which was an awesome experience. I did it with my wife. She hated it and I loved it. I finished and I was like, I can't wait to do more next year because it was held in November. So kind of the last race of the season in the Northeast. And I immediately signed up for my first trifecta the next year. And yeah, then I was like, how do I kind of train for these things? Because I knew nothing about it. Um, Especially since like the beast was 14 miles, and like I think the longest I ever run before was like 3 miles. I have no idea how to run 14 miles.
Mhm.
um, and that kind of led me down this path of, as I was researching, I came across Ben Greenfield, who was into obstacle course racing at the time, and I started listening to his podcast, and then he had on someone by the name of Mark Sisson, who's very big in the ancestral health space, and he had come up with this book called Primal Endurance. And I was like, hey, this is basically how to train for endurance races. I have no other options. Let me let me pick up this book and read for it. And that's kind of started my journey into learning more about ancestral health and training. And so ever since then, I've been kind of going down the rabbit hole of how to optimize my own body and do my own training, and how to fuel it and align my lifestyle with a more ancestral approach to living, and how that can complement my athletic goals and health goals. So yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, I at this point I'm pretty much convinced that obstacle course racing is basically just a trick to get people to run, like because I think most of us start in the same boat. It's like I don't want to run, but if you throw this other stuff in there, it kind of sounds fun. So
Yeah,
it's just this trick to get us running. Like that's all it is.
I think it is too. Yeah, for sure.
um, so I'm kind of curious too. So you were a software engineer. So
Mhm.
what made that desire to switch into this career?
So I still am a full-time software engineer. So
Okay,
I just do the health coaching and training on the side
cool.
as a part-time job. But yeah, I still love doing software engineering. Still a passion of mine. I do it every day. And yeah, it's just it's kind of weird to have a software engineer be that into health and fitness, because you usually think of the software engineer as a very nerdy guy, which I am. But yeah, I yeah, fell in love with obstacle course racing, I
Awesome.
guess. Yeah,
Well, you probably have a nice niche there that you can inspire people that probably used to just sitting and being on the computer or whatever it is, and
for sure.
get out
Yeah.
there and do some stuff. Well, awesome. So I want to talk more about this idea, this ancestral model.
Mhm.
So kind of give us a quick little like summary. What exactly does that mean?
Yeah, so like if you look at most of the health problems, at least this is the, I'll call it a quote unquote theory, but most of the health problems that people suffer from today are really due to ancestral mismatches. And what I mean by that is we evolved over hundreds of thousands of years, eating a certain way, moving a lot, sleeping, with the sunrise, sunset. We evolved in communities with other people. We moved around quite a fair amount trying to find food and build shelters. And occasionally we did some high intensity stuff where we're tracking animals and killing things and stuff like that. And much of what we do today is the complete opposite of what we evolved doing. So we eat a lot of processed foods that we never evolved eating. We don't really sleep that well. We stare at screens most of the day. We sit in chairs, and we talk over Zoom as opposed to interacting with real people. And this can result in a bunch of health problems, right? And we see that, unfortunately, very commonly throughout our everyday lives. And so I kind of realized this, learned about this model of what it means to live ancestrally, and I've seen great improvements in my health and other people's health. And when it comes to athletics and athletes, particularly, I feel like if you can lay a solid foundation of proper nutrition, proper sleep, proper stress management, great social connection, and movement outside of just exercise, that sets you up to be a better athlete, right? It's going to benefit your athletic goals, whether they're obstacle course racing, triathlon, marathon, or whatever, CrossFit, etc. And you have to tweak those things to some degree as an athlete, because honestly, certain athletic events are also ancestral mismatches, right? No one was really ever meant to run for 5, 6, 7, 10 hours straight, right? So there's some things you might need to adjust there, but I find that when you have a solid base of living your life and aligned ancestrally, that things in general just go better, both from a health perspective and from an athletics perspective.
Yeah, that's interesting. I recently read the book "Breathe" by James
Mm,
Nestor, and I can't remember if he was quoting somebody or if it was his quote in there, but basically talking about evolution, saying how it's not always a good thing, right?
mm,
And if we look at from medical advances to just how we live, and obviously he's talking about breathing and how our skull structures are changing and all this crazy stuff, but basically saying that we always think of evolution like strongest, the survival of the fittest, right? Where that we're going to advance based on we have a better likelihood of surviving. But because of all of these things, he's almost saying that it's not always a good thing. This
mm.
evolution that we're going, this path that we're going down, may not be beneficial for our health. It's just it's been made possible by advances.
Yeah, and I'm not anti evolution, anti technology. I don't think we should go back and live in caves. I think modern medicine is a great thing. Like I'm for all of that, but I think that within this modern world that we live in, we probably should try and emulate some of the things we did as, very early humans, right? Like just, should probably walk a fair amount, right? You should probably try. I know that 10,000 step, number may be made up or whatever, but it's a pretty decent marker for saying that you just move throughout the day, right? And like, that's just one thing. Like getting up out of the chair, like we didn't sit in chairs all day long, stand, walk around, squat, crawl, do things that actually a lot of things we do as part in obstacle course races are really emulating things that we probably would have done ancestrally, which I find really cool, carrying heavy things for long distances and crawling under barbed wire and jumping and climbing over, walls and stuff like that. These are all things that we probably would have done a fair amount of and wouldn't have been challenging for our ancestors at all. But today, people, asking them to crawl just 10 feet on their hands and knees can be challenging for a lot of people. So yeah, I think that I'm not anti-technology, I'm not anti-evolution, but I think we just need to inject a little bit more of what we're supposed to be doing back into our lives a little bit, and that makes us better athletes and better people.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times when people hear maybe that ancestral living, that philosophy, they think, well, I don't want to give up my car, my phone, and I like cooked food, and they kind of take it to, and I'm sure there's people out there that that's what they want to go, and they just want minimalist living, and that's their choice. But I'm glad you said that, because I think it's like we can have we can have both. You can have modern society. We can have these conversations on Zoom, which is really cool, because we, weren't able to do stuff like that. But I'm not going to sit here on Zoom all day. I'm gonna get out and do some other things. So I like that you brought up movement outside of exercise, and I think that's a great topic, because so many, and I have clients guilty of this, trying to talk them out of this, where they think that, okay, well, I'm going to do my 3 times a week, go to the gym, I get whatever exercise I'm done, and then that's it. I've completed my exercise requirement, where it's almost like a supplement, right? Like you can supplement a multivitamin or something because you're just not getting enough of it in your diet. That's kind of how exercise should be looked at. We're supplementing it because you may not have a manual labor job and you might not be lifting stuff all day, but it's a good thing you should probably practice and work on. And that comes in handy by going to the gym, but there's so much more we could be doing.
Yeah. And it's funny, I was just reading a study a couple of nights ago, and they were talking about the general recommendation is like 150 minutes of moderate activity a week is what the CDC and World Health Organization, et cetera, they recommend. And that's really just 30 minutes of moderate activity 5 days a week, right? Mm-hmm. But they found if you did those 30 minutes of moderate activity 5 days a week and didn't move the rest of the day, like you were sedentary for 12 hours the rest of the day, that you had no reduction in all-cause mortality even if you exercise, right? It wasn't until I think it was like you got into about like 6 hours of movement outside of exercise that you started to see like a 30% reduction in death, which just proves that like exercise isn't enough, right? In to some degree for some clients, and like you said, like I see it in a lot of clients too, like their average steps is 2,000 steps a day, right? Mm-hmm. And that's all they move outside of exercise. And that's really just not enough. For some clients, I like to tell them that exercise should be optional. Like if you move enough throughout the day, like you shouldn't really have to exercise, right? And you can make your exercise be 30 minutes or 15 minutes or whatever, a couple sprints for 10 minutes and you're done, because you've got in 10 to 15,000 steps the rest of the day and you moved around. And people often wonder like, oh, how do you do that? How do you move that much, right? And it's not terribly hard, like, especially if you start to break it up into chunks throughout your day. I encourage people to like bookend their days at least, start the day with a walk, end their day with a walk. It's great, especially now in the summertime in the Northeast, you can get outside in the morning, the sun's up at 5 o'clock in the morning, from then on, you can probably get outside and go for a walk, right? And it's just 20 minutes and you feel better, you get the sun in your face first thing in the morning, there's benefits for your sleep by doing that. And then just end your day with a walk. And really what I like to do personally is I like to walk around my meals. So I'll go for a walk after breakfast, after lunch, and after dinner. And just 20 minutes, and you'll get easily 10,000 steps throughout the day if you do that just with every other movement that you're taking throughout the day, just getting up, go to the bathroom, getting food, going to the water, that type of stuff. It works out really well. And it's doable. It seems daunting at first. And obviously I don't have people go from 2,000 steps to 15,000 steps in one day. Like, it's like, okay, let's shoot for 5,000 steps, shoot for 8,000 steps after the first week. And they adapt to it and it becomes normal. And then they miss it after, they don't do it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it goes such a long way. And people find in the beginning, like you said, they're fatigued. Like it is a great, obviously it's great for just general health, but for these races, if you're sitting all day and then you work out for an hour or so, and then you go back to sitting, sure, you might get stronger, if that's what you're going for.
Hmm.
But if you were to just move like all day when you can,
Right.
just stand up, move, it makes a big difference.
And when I did the Spartan Ultra, like I viewed my walks during the day as part of my training, like
Yeah.
just being on my feet, because I'm going to be on my feet for a long period of time. Like that all contributed to my training for that race. And again, it's just, that's what we're made to do. We're made to get up and walk around.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, absolutely. I had the same thing when I was training for the ultra. I did my runs and I did my other stuff, but I just tried to stand
yeah,
as much as I could. Like at night, it would suck sometimes, but like watch TV standing up, when I had a break and kind of the day was over, just don't crash out, just stand there, move around. But there's all these little things that it makes a difference.
yeah,
It doesn't sound like it, but I promise
yeah,
you'll feel it. Um, I know I was actually recently having this conversation with a client who kind of going from like right now, and we're just trying to get them moving and getting exercise into their daily life. And it was kind of that first goal. It's like, okay, I'm going to see you 2 days a week. We'll get our training done then,
mm,
and we're going to just incorporate a little bit of movement every day. I'm like, your first goal, I wasn't even shooting for the 150 minutes. I'm like, we'll get there. Like, we're going to go 75 minutes.
yep,
That's our goal for the whole week. I don't care what it is, probably walking. She's like, I like to swim. It's like, great. That works. Whatever it is, we're just going to get you moving, trying to hit those 75 minutes. And I was like, but PS, the 2 hours you see me don't count. It's in addition to these things. Like
mhm,
I want to make that clear that I need your activities of daily living to be more active, not just your fitness.
sure,
Um,
yep,
and I know I've seen studies where people think like more is better, right? Where I'm just going to crush my workout,
mm,
and they'll do where they compare two groups: those that like are just doing really hard training, those that are doing moderate to light training. And actually, what they looked at were total calories throughout the day, not just in the workout. So the workout, obviously, the harder group's going to burn more calories, right? They're moving more and pushing harder. But then what they found were a lot of those people were just crashing out, right? They're taking
yep,
naps throughout the day. They're laying on the couch because they're fatigued. Where the
yep,
other group is like, yeah, I worked out, but I feel good, and they almost more energized and they're moving
yep.
around. And now they're the ones burning more calories, getting better results because they just didn't kill themselves in their 1 hour workout session.
Right. Right. And they're probably better. They're probably able to work out again the next day. Whereas the
Yeah.
person who killed themselves in that 1 hour probably needs to take a couple days off and won't really be able to work out at the same intensity. So at the end of the week, you look at all, the total amount of work done by the person who worked out half as hard, but moved a lot more. They, like you said, are way better off as far as, just if calories burned is a metric or just stamina and endurance. They put in a lot more effort and work into their training than the other person did for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, what if we switch gears and just talk a little like nutrition? So, moving better is going to be great, but obviously, how are we? I'm kind of a loaded question, but mismatching ancestrally when it comes to nutrition.
I think it's the consumption of highly processed foods that really tends to be a problem. I'm not going to claim to be a person who never eats processed food. I have it occasionally, but most of my diet and the diet that I kind of prescribe to my clients is based around whole foods. Right? It's things that grow in the ground. Vegetables, fruits. If beans and legumes are your thing, awesome. Rice, quinoa, if that's your thing, great. Animals, all types of animal meats, if that's your thing, is great. Beef, chicken, cow, pigs, whatever, fish, and that's really what 90% of my diet looks like, is just vegetables, potatoes, and just meat. And that's, I structure my meals around that. And then when it comes to, so in for the average person, I think that's good enough, right? You're talking about your everyday person, you're probably focused around that stuff, you're pretty good, right? But when we talk about athletes, especially athletes that are, working out 6 times a week, doing training crazy amounts of time, um, oftentimes it's hard to get in enough food in a day when you are eating these whole foods. They're extremely filling, and they're, satiating, and you can eat 3 huge meals and maybe get in 2,500 calories, right? If you're really putting your work at it. But once you start to really push the volume and the caloric demands, like, it's going to be hard. So starting to turn to more foods like, I try to work my way up from least minimally processed up, right? So, like things like white rice and oatmeal and, those types of things, even some types of like breads, if that's your thing, type stuff. So like, I try to keep the processing to minimal, and they have some kind of nutritional value to them, as you go up, in caloric demands, and really carbohydrate demands start to increase. Like, you kind of can't get away from it. Like, that's where the ancestral mismatch and what you're trying to accomplish is, not going to align well with my ideology around eating. And I accept that. So it's, kind of a necessary evil as an athlete, and you got to do it, right? And as an athlete, you can probably handle a lot of that stuff. If you're someone, like we say, sitting on the couch 12 hours a day, do you need to be eating 3 cups of rice a day? Probably not. Like, you're not moving. You don't really need that. And do you need like a giant fruit smoothie? No, right? But as an athlete who's burning a lot of calories and working out hard and taking up a lot of glycogen and carbohydrates, like, yeah, you can do that stuff and it'd be perfectly fine for you. You're not going to be phased by it. It's going to benefit from it and that type of stuff. So yeah, really, it just, start out with whole foods, and then, add in what you need basically to get to, the demands of your activity is kind of my philosophy. I know it sounds simple, but
yeah, and I think, I think it sounds like you're being sincere and honest with, it doesn't have to be perfect. And I think anybody that, it's this is real life. Like, sometimes you enjoy some of those processed foods, and
yeah.
it's okay. Like, it's not a foundation of my diet, but I'm like, I'm gonna eat this right now.
Right. Yeah. If it's your birthday, if it's your kid's birthday, if it's your anniversary, like, go out and have a hell of a time. Like,
Yeah.
drink all the beer, eat all the ice cream, have all the cake, like, enjoy yourself. And once it's done, like, that's just not an everyday thing. It's just that there's occasions to do it and there's times to do it. And it's part of being healthy, honestly. I think, like, you're having a great social interaction with a bunch of people, and there's beer involved or alcohol involved and cake and ice cream and all that fun stuff and chips, and great, like, that's part of being human, right? And again, like, because you're putting in all this other work, your body is more resilient to taking on the insults that come along with those foods, right? So it's fine, right? I'm not against it. There's time and place for everything, but I think we have a big problem today where most people's diets consist of those foods all the time, and there's very little of the whole foods, and they're not athletes. They're not working out like the rest of us. So yeah, it's you have to take it within context, I guess, is very important, right?
So I'm curious. So I think one of the reasons people will go right to the processed foods is convenience, right? Because it's just easy to get those types of foods. And obviously, they'll often taste good, but I think convenience is a big piece of it. And I'm curious if you have any insight for like race day, like fuel. Like, say I'm doing a beats, I'm doing an ultra. Now, are you like, do you have any more whole food options tend to go to? Or are you like, nope, the gels are convenient? I'm just curious kind of what your approach would be for something like that.
Yeah. What I tell my clients is that when it's race day, anything goes, right? It's whatever you can digest and whatever works best for you and allows you to perform your best. If that's, traditional gels and whatever, like, great, that's race day. We're here to race, not to say, look at me, I finished this race and with the best quality diet ever, right? That's not going to win you the race, right? So whatever makes you perform your best and makes you feel your best during the race, that's what you should use. And when you're training, you should practice and figure out what that is, right? For me, I think there are more whole food options that are, more and more coming on the market every day. I personally like to race with, when I'm doing something longer, like a beast or longer than that. I'll race with a mixture of some liquid calories as well as some, actual food, calories. And what I usually do is mix. I'll have a flask in my vest. One flask is just water and electrolytes. The other one has some essential amino acids in it, and some MCT powder, so a little bit of fat. And then I have a sweet potato powder. That's just powdered sweet potato from Equip Foods as a carbohydrate source. And I'll throw that in the other water bottle. So I'll sip on that along the way. And then as far as like solid foods that I bring with me, I throw in my vest. I'll have nut butter packets are really good. So like almond butter, peanut butter, you can get them, like they have different flavors, honey and chocolate and all kinds of tasty things. Those work really well for me. I like Lara bars, which are like dates and nuts that are mixed together in a bar form. Those work really well for me. There's also a company, I believe they're out of California. I think it's called Muir, MUIR. And they make like what you would imagine like a traditional gel pack, but it's made out of whole foods. So they're like fruits and like sweet potatoes and stuff like that, but like in a mashed like gel pack, you just rip open the top, suck it down, and go. And they have some with caffeine in it and some without caffeine, and some that are fast absorbing. And if you're doing something like a quick race where you really need quick access to carbohydrates, or long lasting if you're doing something more like a beast or an ultra. So there's a bunch of different kind of whole food options that I personally use that work for me. I've experimented with various different things, and those are the ones that I use. But I tell clients all the time, like, it's race day, fair game, anything. Like Diet Coke, I don't really care what it is. Whatever's going to get you to the finish line at that point, just you got to do what you got to do, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And kind of goes back to the point like you're making earlier of, some sports and athletics aren't always, we weren't designed to do,
Yeah.
but they're fun and you're competing, and sometimes you're going to take every advantage as possible. But I appreciate you sharing some of those. I hadn't heard of that one before, so I want to check it out. And I'm sure there's others out there, and it really comes down to if you do some research, you'll definitely find obviously there's still processing on a lot of these foods, but like you said, like what's my best option? If it's coming from whole foods, like I have most likely a better fit for my lifestyle versus, this is just chemicals and whatever it is made out of. Go ahead.
I was also going to say, like, I think there's something to also doing some training. Like, I think a lot of people traditionally like think that they have to fuel all the time, right? And so they might go out for a 30-minute run or whatever, and they always have something to eat or whatever, and that's because that's what they're told, that's what they're marketed to. But in reality, like, you can probably go a fair amount even at a high 30 minutes at a high intensity. You should really be able to do without probably need to eat anything.
Yeah.
And so you can incorporate that type of training into your race prep, so that you actually do need to consume less while you're out there, is I think also a great thing to do as an athlete as well, because the less stress you have to put on your stomach to try and digest things, because it's not going to want to digest anything. It's more concerned about the quote unquote fictional tiger that you're running from in a race.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not putting any effort into your gut to try and digest things, the things you're trying to survive. The better, right? The better chances. So if you're someone who has like GI issues while you're racing, trying to find that sweet spot of, okay, this is the least amount of fuel that I can get away with, but still perform at the level I want to, and try and train yourself to get to that point, is something you should practice in your training as well. So there's something to doing some fasted training and doing some longer runs. They might be slower, but without having taken anything but water or whatever. And that can help from a fueling perspective as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The body can definitely adapt to a lot of different situations, whether good or bad, right? So if you're used to eating every 20 minutes, your body's going to kind of expect that. If you're okay with, fasting or just going more prolonged times, your body's okay with that too. Like it's just going to kind of feed off of whatever you're regularly doing. So you can definitely improve upon that.
Yeah.
Um, well, this was awesome. I mean, this is some really great information, from just your whole philosophy of, trying to avoid some of those ancestral mismatches to, how we can, like simple. I think everything we talked about today was straightforward and simple. It just does take effort and things that you have to pay attention to incorporate this into your regular routine. If people want to learn more about you, where can they find out more?
Yeah. So there's a number of places they can find me. I'm on Instagram at my health coaching website is at RJB Health Coaching on Instagram. You can also find me on Facebook under RJB Health Coaching as well. I have a website too at rjbhealth.coach. So it's not .com, it's .coach. And there, one of the cool things I try to, share a lot of the content that, around what we talked about today. And I have a weekly newsletter that goes out where I'll send you, jump on the newsletter. I usually send you my blog posts I do, just some thoughts on things. I usually try to do a weekly Facebook Live and stuff like that. So if you go to my homepage at rjbhealth.coach and click on the newsletter tab, you can enter your email address there and sign up for the newsletter and kind of just get all the content that I put out just directly to your inbox. So you don't have to spend too much time scrolling on Facebook or Instagram, which is not necessarily a good thing all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Well, I will put all those links in the show notes for this episode so people can find it pretty easily and just click right on there and join the newsletter. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate you sharing your insight on some of these topics.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike.